How about the difference in NFL to college in terms of how young quarterbacks get to sit early in preseason once they're anointed the guy, but yet in college it's like we don't really want to say when a job is won until we actually think that the job is won.
Right. I think it's been I mean, obviously the job's been won for a while, I think, but they took their time, and I'm glad they got it done before today. I don't think that's what the focus needs to be today. So I'm glad they were able to complete that task last week. I would have liked to just talk to Raiola last week, but we'll get him on Tuesday, and that'll be the Dylan day. And I noticed that he and his dad, they're going to become popular T-shirts. They're both wearing these shirts that kind of have both of them on them. His dad from his Nebraska days and Dylan today. So they're going to be popular T-shirts. And I kind of appreciate that Dylan leans into that. I think it really does mean something to him that his dad played here and his uncle coaches here. And I do think he'll carry that with him into the season. It matters to him for sure.
We're talking with Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, as we await a depth chart, which I believe is supposed to be released today, are you expecting any surprises, or are there any areas you're looking at specifically that you're interested to see?
Yeah, I mean, there could be surprises. I don't know exactly what we'll see from how many oars there'll be at the running back spot. It would be surprising to me if there weren't any. There was just a number one, but we'll see. I think I'll probably be looking at just the order of merit at receiver and what that looks like. If there's a bunch of oars there as well, I have a pretty good idea of who I think they're going to start, because I think I have a pretty good idea of what they want to do.
You picked a hard one, because sometimes receivers doesn't always tell you the truth if a guy can play multiple positions.
Right.
Like, the number 2Z may be the number 2 slot, but there's 2 slots listed. Do you know what I mean?
That's right. Yeah. So I think you're going to see Jalen Lloyd play a lot. I don't know that Jalen Lloyd will be on the field for the first snap. I think they want to try to get a perimeter passing game going, where quick throws, and I think you're going to see Janiron Bonner, playing football for Nebraska to some degree, getting out there and being on the perimeter. Now I think they've got plays for him too. I think they have plays for him as well, but I think, there's an opportunity to get Banks the ball early, or so you could see some multiple tight ends. I just think that they want to find a way to keep defenses off balance without running the quarterback. And one of the ways you do that is to get the ball out in the perimeter and, let guys run a little bit. So I think you'll see some of that. I don't know how that's all going to play out in terms of when they play Colorado and it's 3rd and 6. I'm going to guess Jalen Lloyd's on the field, but we'll have to see what happens.
You got to imagine with all these receivers, the RPO game would have to be huge.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you're going to use that like an extension of perimeter run game.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, absolutely. That would be the hope, and I think Dylan will be fine at that. I think he doesn't have the fastest release of all time, but he's got a quick release, and the ball gets where it needs to go very quickly. So Dylan can do all the arm slot stuff, and he can throw it. He's a very skilled player, so he can throw it kind of like a baseball player. He can kind of throw that quick pass, sidearm, and they're accurate. I think that's what's important. It was obviously a challenge for Harburg because they didn't run the plays. And so they just didn't. It was a huge challenge for Adrian Martinez. That was a play that he just wasn't very good at. Conversely, Taylor Martinez was good at those throws. And he was good at being able to throw. He couldn't maybe throw 40 yards downfield very well, but he could throw that little, hitch pass or tunnel screen. In the modern offense, college football, you have to be able to run those plays, and I think Dylan's going to be pretty good at it.
Sam, as you kind of think about some of the things that we've heard in whether it's from Coach Rhule or from coordinators, players throughout the offseason, is there an area that I don't know if concerned is the right word, but as we're finally in game week, like what's the area that you have the most question marks about?
I think that one of the areas that he has question marks about, obviously, is the kicking game.
Sure.
So the field goal and the place kicking game.
Yeah, he pulled no punches about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a definite concern there about, doing a good job at that spot. I think going into a game like this, obviously UTEP's going to go fast, and so concerns about how you manage no huddle and how you manage an offense that's probably going to try to mix deep shots and quick throws. So they're going to try to test your corners a little bit. And so, not Tommy Hill, I think will be fine, but how does Marquise Buford handle that? He hasn't played corner in a game in a while. How does Sia Wright handle that? He's played a lot of games. So, I think there's a number of considerations to keep in mind. And those are probably some of the ones that I would think about. One of the challenges of playing a team like UTEP is they're going to move at a certain pace, and you got to be ready for that. Simultaneously, if they have a couple of drives where they just go 3 and out, they're going to have to slow their offense down. So I think Nebraska wants to go out and get a couple of stops really quickly, put 14 on the board, and then UTEP's got to do something else. They can't put themselves in a position where they're putting their defense out there for 85 plays like Fresno State did about a decade ago.
You know what I think? And they're certainly smarter than me, so maybe people think this is an aha moment, or a duh moment. But I think something that's underappreciated that they've been practicing is who to talk to and who does the talking and who's receiving the information through their headsets. Because there's so much that goes on with that I think sometimes fans don't realize. Sometimes the person receiving the information is good at receiving it, but he's not good at relaying it. Sometimes you don't want to lose that ability for another coach because he's on the headset and he may be good someplace else on the sidelines. Like those kinds of things, practicing it and getting comfortable with it, I think are understated, because how many times did you watch college football this weekend and quarterbacks or defensive players had to put their hands to their ears? It seemed like it was a little disjointed or it wasn't smooth. And maybe that's it's a technical issue, but I think the fact that they're practicing it shouldn't be understated.
For sure. Yeah. So this will happen when they play road games. The technology inside the helmets is not probably quite as good as it needs to be, and there are times when I think it can be hard to hear. Well,
yeah, it's going to be loud, right? Like watch on defense.
Yeah. I don't know how much they'll use it on defense, but yeah, I think that's going to be one of the challenges is how they use it, because of the noise and things like that. One of the things that I'll be looking for is when a drive is over. And they kind of went back and forth with this. So Satterfield initially started the season on the field. I don't think that was exactly what they wanted. Then he moved to the booth, and Matt Rhule was doing a lot of the coaching. And I don't know. Did Matt Rhule kind of take over the quarterback coaching at some point last season? It seemed like it. Guys would run off the field, and he would kind of do the talking to Heinrich Harburg, and that's fine. But now they're going to have a designated quarterback coach. And I think that'll probably help that Glenn Thomas will be the guy that they do most of the talking to. And obviously, Rhule can put in his 2 cents, but they're really going to benefit from having a specific quarterback coach on the sidelines. That's probably something that they missed a little bit last year. So, yeah, now that you can have pretty much anybody coaching, it's not a question of giving up the assignments perfectly. It's making sure you don't have too many voices in the ear of the player. And I think Rhule said that Satterfield is going to be the primary voice in Raiola's ear during the games because he's the play caller.
Sam, kind of on that same note, you're right. He did say Satterfield would be in his ear, but I have to imagine he'll still get talked to by Glenn Thomas in person. Like, are you worried about that dynamic at all, being kind of too, like you said, too many voices in Raiola's ear there, or how do you see that process kind of playing out?
I think if they talk the same or same language is fine.
Yeah, I think Thomas being there will be good, and then Satterfield's going to be calling the plays, and so I think all that makes sense. You don't want to give the quarterback too much information before the snap. I think in those moments, what you want to try to do is be a good caddy, not Jordan Spieth's caddy because he talks all the time, but you want to be a caddy that just says, okay, you've got your plan, put a good swing on it, let's run the play, let's go. Like you don't want to overload the quarterback in that moment. Maybe you give him one swing thought, so to speak. You give him one thing, hey, watch this. But I think that's probably the extent of it. Raiola is going to be fine. In that portion of it, I think he's going to be just fine. I think the area where you're going to want to watch just how he does is, and they mentioned it, that his footwork needed to have work. He's just got to make the ordinary throws the same way that you make them. Just put step to the guy, make the throw. Don't sail the pass. All those components. I think those are just things he's going to have to work on. Making the ordinary plays, making smart, solid throws. That's where I think he's going to have to work on being good. But I think he's got good intuition and all the things that you would hope he'll have. He'll make some mistakes, but I don't anticipate him making an unusual amount of mistakes. I think he'll be pretty decent.
So I kind of the precursors about the plan and with the quarterbacks and not burning red shirts. Like he was pretty specific, and I imagine they've had these conversations with all position groups, and you certainly want to win the game first, right? Like you want to play at a certain level that establishes the standard. But how do you think Nebraska plays it with the 4 games versus not 4 games versus if some of these games, if games go the way that they want them to, how do they set that standard? You think those are pre-talks with those potential players, or do you think they're more playing it by ear?
At the quarterback position, I think they would very much like to redshirt Danny Kaelin. That's he was kind of talking around it, but that's what they'd like to do. And they have 4 games with which, to get him valuable reps, which is a third of the regular season. They have an opportunity to get him valuable repetitions if that's what they need to do because they're way ahead in the game. So I think they would probably prefer to redshirt Danny. The question then becomes how and how often do they use Heinrich Haarberg on the field, and in what ways? I don't know that Heinrich's going to be a receiver. We'll just see. He could be maybe a tight end. He could potentially be a wildcat quarterback.
I like to take Coach word at his rule because he hasn't lied to me. But when he says we're going to use Haarberg, like I think they're going to use him.
Yeah.
Right. Because he's like, well, we got to be smart. I certainly don't want to lose my second string quarterback on a fullback dive. First of all, I gushed a little that he used the term dive because nobody says fullback dive anymore. So, my crush continues. But like I think he's telling us I think he's telling us exactly what he wants, how he sees it. You don't go through the Frost analogy, even though he was answering a specific question, without having an idea of how you want to use the guy. Right? He was too precise. Like he's clearly thought about it.
Yeah, as well they should. I think that if you're going to have him on your roster, then finding a way to use him is probably an important component of trying to make your team better. And again, I think Danny Kaelin could be a very good college quarterback. I think part of what they're saying is that he just needs to grow up a little bit physically and, work on his arm and all those components. But I think that he has a bright future ahead. I don't know if he's going to want to wait 3 years. I think he's just as good and maybe better than the guy they have coming in this coming season. A lot of people, there's been a lot of fanfare around TJ Lateef, but I think Danny's just as good of a player. So, I think there's time for him to develop. Dylan, obviously, the goal there is to is to have him, be an incredible player for 3 years and then head off to the league. And I don't know if that'll happen, but
yeah. And you put 2 years in between he and DK, then you try to put 2 years in between. Yeah. I mean, I can see how they're trying to put the plan together.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Nebraska, for example, has a big year this year, that they may be in the market for a 26 quarterback that's potentially quite special. You can't get too caught up in the what do we do if we can't just sign a 5-star every year? Yeah, you can.
I can't imagine. Look, I get it, right? I clearly people will say I lack objectivity, but I always tell people I'd rather be right than well liked. Like my affinity for Coach Rhule isn't because for anything other than I think he's good for something that I love, right? Like I clearly love the university. I think if this staff has success, watching them on the recruiting trail in a year would be out of control. Sam, they're so good at what they do. They're so good at identifying and locking in and talking and building relationships. If you remotely give him ammo of like an 8-win season, he'd be incredible.
Yeah, and they've recruited pretty well without having that.
Right.
So,
like, can you imagine?
He has it. Yeah, I can actually. Like, I've thought about like and I kind of wrote about that today. Like, if they're able to have the kind of season they're truly capable of, the trajectory for the program can go up really, really fast. That's why this season is so important. Like, you can imagine a 6-6 season this year. Hey, they went to a bowl, yay! But they're going to have to rebuild their lines next year, and they do. Like, you can't just. Well, it'll all be fine. Well, will it? Like you have.
Oh, I would say retool, but I get it because you lose a ton of starts.
Yeah, well, you're going to lose 4 guys that are 23 years or older on the offensive line, and they're on the defense. And it's just you always build in. You can't assume that redshirt freshmen and redshirt sophomores are going to be as good as the 6-year seniors you paid to come back, which they did. If they had really wanted to say, hey, you know what, year 3. They wouldn't have allocated their NIL money to all the guys that came back. They would have just said, hey, you know what? We're going to go young. We think we can win 6 or 7 this year with a young team, and then next year we're going to be really good. So
I don't want to speculate. I don't know what they allocated to who. But here's like along that line though, Sam, where you talked about like who's going to talk to the quarterbacks and who's going to talk to this. One thing, kind of getting back to this Coach Rhule thing. I always say common language builds in accountability, right? So Sat and Thomas and McGuire, those guys can be on the same page. They're doing that. You know what I'm excited about if the sidelines works that way? Is whoever needs a touch can get Coach Rhule's talk, right? If he wants to go over and talk to position group X, he knows that somebody else has got it on the back end, right? So the better that he's equipped his staff, the freer he is to be what he's really good at. And that's attacking strategies and psyches. Like he's an empowerment guy. So the more he gets to empower people and put his stamp on things, the better off that team's going to be.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, we'll see. There's an incredible opportunity this season. And the schedule is there to do it. And I think they have the players. As I wrote today, they spent the entire offseason signing players who are old guys. And they didn't have to do that. They could have gone out and said, well, let's go out and get a bunch of, 4-star guys that decided to leave other places. On 3 and 247 is going to think we did a really good job signing these guys because they have high ratings and we'll get pats on the back in 2 years when they come to fruition. And they didn't do that. They went out and got Micah Mazuka, who's like a 5th-year senior, Jamal Banks, Isaiah Nayor, who am I missing? Stephon Thompson. They went out and got old guys. Mm-hmm. They went out and got guys who could contribute right away and have 1 year left because they think this is the year. They think they have a chance to be pretty darn good this year. And the one long-term play they made was Dylan Raiola, right? He's the one that kind of blew up the Kyle McCord thing. But, A, I think he's just as good as Kyle McCord, right now. And B, if he can get it done, if he can just play steady football, I think Nebraska thinks they have all the other pieces in place to become a very good team this year. And if they're able to get it done this year, how much momentum do they create for the future? They create a lot of momentum.
That's our guy, Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, we appreciate it. Great stuff as always. And real quick before we let you go, about 30 seconds. Could we get a record prediction from you?
8-4.
All righty. You heard it here first. Sam McKewon, 8-4. We appreciate it, Sam. Have a good week.
Thanks, Sam.
Take care.